Greetings, everyone. Welcome to my sketchbook. It's getting kind of late in the morning, so I want to sit down and draw a picture. And what I was thinking of as I was walking towards my desk is the sort of a weird toy from the 1980s, I believe, called a boglin, which was kind of a silicone-based puppet, and it was kind of grotesque, but I don't know. Let's see what happens here. It's not perfectly what I have in mind, but the concept of this puppet-like thing was that it was a kind of like a round head with little tiny arms and legs hanging off it. So like no real body from my memory, and maybe um, yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I have something else kind of in my head too, so we'll see how this goes. Uh, First, in most of my scribbling, I like to, doodle in some eyes. It's not typical that people do it this way, but it's typical that I do it this way. So I don't want the eyes to be too sinister. I'm going to sort of shorten some of the features, I think, too. Maybe. Let's see what happens. Almost a kissy face off to one side here. We're going to have a face of determination, maybe. Maybe. But I'm thinking of something else. So the jaw is going to be twisted over a little bit. Let's go with kind of like that Maxon. It's sort of a craze, I guess, that some people are into, where they try to like change their jaw lines. There's a name for that. Maybe it is maxing or something like that. We're going to go with little ears here. Let's try to work in something. We'll see how this goes too. Oh yeah, no, it was supposed to be boglin thing. I'm thinking of something a little different though. So I was born in the 1970s, mid 1970s. So I've been around for a little while. Uh, there's something kind of fun about the concept that when people have kids, they don't want to raise them to be like how they were raised. And I wonder if some of those people secretly want to raise their children to be like their grandparents. That's a weird thought, don't you think? They want to. So I think each generation kind of does that. They try to do something that they feel is going to be an improvement uh, to how they were raised. Now, maybe I'm wrong in thinking that. I don't have kids, so it's not like I'm an expert on any of that stuff. But I think most people kind of want to have things go better for their own kids than what they had themselves. But for some reason, they might look at their grandparents as a template for the type of person that they want to be that's opposite to their own parents. And the generation before might have thought the same thing. The generation before that thought the same thing. I don't know, just an idea that I had floating around in my head, the possibility that that's what kind of goes on. Now, I think modern parenting is a lot different than what happened before. Turns out, I guess I needed a little bit of a body, and some part of this reminds me of one of the former prime ministers of Canada. That looks a little Jean Chrétien like. Not my intention, but it's kind of what's going on. I don't think that's really. Anyway, no, I'm not going to let that happen that way. Let's see. Let's go with a belt buckle. So I guess maybe this is not going to be so much like a boglin. It's going to be more of a, well, not like a caricature, but maybe. Bell bottoms. Oh, we're going to go with like unnecessary platform shoes. If you look at the end of this video, up in this corner roughly, this is where I typically put, I guess you'd call it like a channel icon invite. You'll see, actually, it's a picture of me with like ridiculous collars like that. So at that point in my life, I wasn't buying clothing for myself. So yeah, I was dressed by, somebody who probably looked at counterculture type stuff and thought, yeah, this is cool to put your kid in clothes like this. That's funny. Anyway, so yeah, got to look at that human being. See how cool that is. But yeah, I didn't wear platform shoes. So I don't know if I'm going to leave that looking so Chrétien like. So yeah, look that human being up if you want to see what I'm talking about, who Jean Chrétien was. Let's see. Up here. Okay, so let's move this over a little bit. Here, I think we're going to have a disco ball. It's kind of interesting that what was once kind of cool is cool again. Like that phrase that I just said, something being cool. I don't know if it's ever really gone out of fashion. I think movies and movie makers, they've been holding on to these things for a while. So I don't know if some of the phrasing of the 1950s stuck around the same way. But there are things that float around, and if you want to call it the lexicon or the vernacular or what have you, that young people, much younger than me, think that they're developing these cues in language. And they are. But social media, all that kind of stuff, it has a weird influence on the way people speak. So, I mean, for someone my age to, walk around and say that something's totally raised up or whatever, it's not really a natural thing, and it ends up being kind of cringe, as some people would say. And well, that's a despicable thing, but regardless, some younger people, I'm putting little dots in this, by the way, because mirrors are sometimes tilted funny in disco balls. What am I getting at? Oh yeah, the phrases, catchphrases. If you're repeating something else that somebody else says, well, you're conforming to whatever that thing is anyway. So what ends up being cool, it's almost a bit of trickery going on. So yeah, if an older person says something that you think is really from your generation, well, you're just being tricked anyway. So if you can, come up with your own phrases is kind of what I'm getting at. It's yeah, gross me green. Can you imagine? That's something that somebody used to would say, or gag me with a spoon. I mean, take it easy. There's another phrase. So yeah, we have a disco ball there. We have this person here. Well, I'm going to change this a little bit because I don't need it to look. It's only me that's probably going to notice this as being similar to somebody that helped to run a country. So, what can I do to change that? Well, we'll see how this goes. Politicians are funny. If you can find what they were like before they became political leaders, they had a whole different kind of mentality for the most part. So, whether they would be conservative or liberal or whatnot, they were idealistic. How about that? And then once they get in, they find out that there's constituents and they have to toe a certain line once they're in. But they're very different mostly before they got into the system. And the system itself, regardless of who's in power, is always kind of like there's an establishment of sorts. It's like, well, there's people of influence, and that could be based on money, who will always be there no matter who's in power. So you kind of have to play a game of sorts because they could be major employers, for example. If you get into politics, you want to see people get employment and decent jobs, and you kind of have to appease the ones who do that. And there could be tax cuts, there could be, and it sounds like I'm talking about conspiracy, and in truth, maybe it is. But the thing is, no matter what government's in, there's certain businesses that will be there or have been there, and it's not really good to just make things miserable for them, because sometimes if they have that kind of power, they could just pick up and go. You don't really want that to happen. I've seen that happen where somebody thinks that they can play games with a company, and they end up losing quite badly. What else do we need going on here? Well, I could make it so that this afro kind of goes low. We wouldn't necessarily have that same sort of fade, short on the sides, if we're thinking 1970s. 60s and 70s for the afro was this crazy thing. The early stages of, Michael Jackson, for example. You'll find that kid. How's that going, I wonder? Let's continue some of this curly hair. Take a little dip over here in my ink. All right. So we have this. trying to come up with something. This is radical stuff going on here. When I was a kid, one of the coolest phrases was rad. And that's something I talked about in a previous video, that I had influence from the surf world, and maybe the Ninja Turtles too, I suppose. So yeah, something was radical or rad. Groovy's been around for quite some time, and that is what I'm working on here. Now, weirdly, I think with that phrase, groovy, it could have had something to do with how records are played. Vinyl, the discs themselves have grooves in them. So let's just say that's what that was all about. I could be wrong. If something is groovy, it might be one of those sensation type things where you would kind of get into the flow, into a groove. And if it was groovy, so like it's a catchphrase type thing, right? If something was groovy, you would be down with it. Whatever. That's the boomers came up with that stuff. Counterculture is kind of the thing of whatever's going on with the previous generation. You don't really want to be truly associated with them. Now we need to get a bit more going on here. We need that V to definitely be there. And why? Because that's the way it has to be, man. Oh yeah, we could let that kind of flow through there. Now, because I grew up when I did, around the people that I did, we got to see technology happen a little bit differently. Like home computers were not a thing for everybody. We got a home computer towards, I'm going to say, maybe the late 90s, mid to late 90s. And that was kind of a big deal because, I mean, we didn't have internet, so we didn't even have dial up. What it was a processing device where we had a dot matrix printer. And it was one of those things that was fed. I don't remember what that type of paper feed was, but it had like a tearaway perforated edge. And yeah, almost like it was hole punched to feed through. So pretty strange. We always had a typewriter in the house. So going from typewriter to a word processing home computer seemed easy enough because typing was kind of built into us. And then by the time, and I set this aside for a second so I could show you guys it. and you've probably seen it on this channel before. So this is a BlackBerry. This is one of the first uh, sort of like smart devices of about 20 years ago. Well, that thing was remarkable because it was better than a pager. You could find a way to communicate your ideas so much easier with something like that. And you had a QWERTY keyboard built into it. And QWERTY, of course, is just the layout of a typewriter. Let me show you that. So, yeah, I'm going to let that kind of... So you see this here? That's the layout. You'd see that in your phone, but we referred to that as QWERTY because of the typing layout of a typewriter. You know, like the most frequently used letters, so vowels and consonants, would be within certain ranges of your fingers. So you naturally would find, okay, well, I can get to the T from there. And with your other hand, you knew you could get to the O. So it was based on the most frequently used sort of things. Pretty slick. Let me get back to this. See if that'll focus back in. So yeah, what is old becomes new again is kind of what I'm getting at. We are getting to a point, though, with the way technology is run, is that there'll be less input by us, the user. Like, we will say things, but now you can have things completed for you, so you don't really have to work that hard at it. If you don't need to, you don't have to. Cars will drive us around, and yeah, our lives are supposed to be easier for it. I don't know if I want to put a mustache on this cool character. This is wild, whatever I have going on here. All right, well, let's do an outline and then let this kind of come to an end. But yeah, well, let me know in the comments what you think about what I'm rambling on about people raising their grandparents who were very much opposite to their own parents. I think I did get a lot of influence from my parents. So, yeah, I don't know. Not everybody's raised the same, of course, so. I just do think that it's possible that people didn't want to be the same. They wanted something different. All right, I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to use a little bit of water and a brush. I'm going to go down here to the feet and I'm going to, I got an idea. I'm going to need some help with the shadow anyway. I'm going to get this pen back. So with a disco ball, you would have multiple light sources. But with this one, I'm just going to kind of use the light of the disco ball for the shadow to be cast. Just a little bit that way. I don't think I had enough ink around the base of these platform shoes to do that. So I had to add some. Now I have a cup and water, and let's get to work on that a little bit. So I want that shadow this come to an end because I'm not really going to do a lot more to this. For the doodle, for the scribble, for the sketch, or whatever you want to call this. It's not too serious. The underside of this part of the collar here, just a little bit there, a little bit underneath the chin. A little bit back here like this, because this head would cast a bit of a shadow, but we're not really that concerned about that. Now doing some shade towards the back end of these letters. This overlapping kind of thing that I have going on here. Kind of adds a little bit of depth, but not perfectly. And then I'll do the opposite on that side over here. So got a little bit of a shadow cast off this secondary O. A little bit here, not much. I don't know how many of you speak other languages. I'm sure that you do. That's cool. I've always liked V's and W's. And so depending on what's built into what you say, a U is a very different thing than a V. And I think a lot of Western, well, people in the West, English-based language, you might refer to a double U as being something that has a U shape, but just two of them. And other places, maybe Latin-based languages, like to refer to that as a V, but a double V. I don't know why that just popped into my head, but I think that is a strange thing. Well, that's it. I think I let that one go on a little bit longer than I wanted it to, but well, I wanted to draw, so what could I say? It doesn't need to be more than that. I don't have to apologize for that. So yeah, well, that's a V, and two of those is a double V. Thanks for hanging out. As I would have said before, if you look up here, you'll see a younger version of me with collar like that from the 1970s. And if you go down here, of course, that's where you're going to find, a previous video. So listen, folks, it's fun hanging out with you. Hope you've had some fun hanging out with me. If there's something that you'd like me to ramble on about, let me know. I'm not an expert in anything in particular, but I've been around for a little while, so I've seen some pretty wacky things. Yeah, that's it, I think. I'll just look at some of the hair going on here, and then setting down the pen is tough. All right, well, I think that's it. Super groovy, everybody. Ciao for now. Well, I think it's ciao for now. Where's the button for this thing? Here we go.